I must have been 6 or 7 when I lived in Lebanon. The country was ravaged by war at the time, and murders were common and frequent. I remember during a particularly vicious era, when the bombings rarely stopped, I would stay at home sitting in front of my television watching a very, very strange show. It was a kids' show that lasted about 30 minutes and contained strange and sinister images. To this day, I believe it was a thinly veiled attempt on the part of the media to use scare tactics to keep kids in place, because the moral of every episode revolves around very uptight ideologies. Stuff like, bad kids stay up late, bad kids have their hands under the covers when they sleep, and bad kids steal from the fridge at night. It was very weird, and in Arabic to top it off. I didn't understand much of it, but for the most part, the images were very graphic and comprehensive. The thing that stuck with me the most, however, was the closing scene. It remained much the same in every episode. The camera would zoom in on an old, rusted, closed door. As it gets closer to the door, strange and sometimes even agonizing screams would become more audible. It was extremely frightening, especially for children's programming. Then a text would appear on the screen in Arabic writing, "That's where the bad kids go." Eventually, both the image and the sound would fade out, and that would be the end of the episode. About 15 or 16 years later, I became a journalistic photographer. That show has been in my mind all my life, popping up in my thoughts sporadically. Eventually, I had enough and decided to do some research. I finally managed to uncover the location of the studio where much of the channel's programming had been recorded. Upon further research and eventually traveling on site, I found out it was now desolate and had been abandoned after the big war ended. I entered the building with my camera. It was burnt out from the inside. Either a fire had broken out or someone had wanted to incinerate all of the wooden furniture. After a few hours of cautiously making my way into the studio and snapping pictures, I found an isolated, out-of-the-way room. After having to break through a few old locks and managing to break the heavy door open, I remained frozen in the doorway for several long minutes. Traces of blood, feces, and tiny bone fragments laid scattered across the floor. It was a small room and an extremely morbid scene. What truly frightened me, though, what made me turn away and never want to come back, was the bolted, caged microphone hanging from the ceiling in the middle of the room.
One night, a woman went out drinking with her girlfriends. She left the bar fairly late at night, got in her car, and onto a deserted highway. After a few minutes, she noticed a lone pair of headlights in her rear view mirror approaching at a pace just slightly quicker than hers. As the car pulled up behind her, she glanced and saw the turn signal on. The car was going to pass. When suddenly, it swerved back behind her, pulling up dangerously close to her tailgate, and the brights flashed. Now she was getting nervous. The lights dimmed for a moment, and the brights came back on, and the car behind her surged forward. The frightened woman struggled to keep her eyes on the road, and fought the urge to look at the car behind her. Finally, her exit approached, but the car continued to follow, flashing the bright lights. Through every stoplight and turn, it followed her until she pulled into her driveway. She figured her only hope was to make a mad dash into the house and call the police. As she fled from the car, so did the driver of the car behind her, and he screamed, locked the door, and called the police, Call 911. When the police arrived, the horrible truth was finally revealed to the woman. The man in the car had been trying to save her. As he pulled up behind her and his headlights illuminated her car, he saw the silhouette of a man with a butcher knife raising up from the back seat to stab her. So he flashed his brights and the figure crouched back down.
Our universe is built upon the number 2. In our cells, DNA is composed of 2 helical threads. Matter has its opposite, antimatter. Computers run on a code built on 2 digits, 1 and 0. Likewise, religions are built around good and evil, 2 forces that oppose each other in both action and purpose. God has his counterpart, Satan. Jesus has his opposite, the Antichrist. This pattern even shows up in polytheistic religions. Thor has his counterpart, Loki, and the Olympian gods in Greek mythology has their opposites, the Titans. However, one of our most popular mythological figures, Santa Claus, has lost the tail of his opposite. Called Krampus, this being dealt out punishments to the wicked children of the world. For the particularly nasty children, the Krampus administered the harshest of punishments, abduction and death. Over time, as mankind's command on its realm expanded, our technologies and our own actions took the places that were once held by mythological beings. Nowadays, parents indulge their children with gifts, replacing the old Santa Claus. However, there exist parents who snap and do unthinkable things to their children. Every year, our news media broadcasts stories of parents who went over the edge, almost like they were possessed by a demon. With no Santa Claus to reward the righteous, and no punishment for the wicked, both forces are unleashed indiscriminately against good and evil alike. For every naughty child rewarded, a counterbalance must exist. Yin must have a yang.
Shout out to Mr. Therizinosaurus for suggesting this video.
Soundwave superior. Autobots inferior.
Russian researchers in the late 1940s kept 5 people awake for 15 days using an experimental drug-based stimulant. They were kept in a sealed environment to carefully monitor their oxygen intake so the gas didn't kill them, since it was toxic in high concentrations. This was before closed-circuit cameras, so they had only microphones and 5-inch thick glass porthole-sized windows into the chamber to monitor them. The chamber was stocked with books, cots to sleep on but no bedding, running water and toilet, and enough dry food to last all 5 for over a month. The test subjects were political prisoners deemed enemies of the state during World War II. Everything was fine for the first 5 days. The subjects hardly complained, having been promised falsely that they would be set free if they submitted to the test and did not sleep for 30 days. Their conversations and activities were monitored, and it was noted that they continued to talk about increasingly traumatic incidents in their past, and the general tone of their conversations took a darker aspect after the 4th day mark. After 5 days, they started to complain about the circumstances and events that led them to where they were, and started to demonstrate severe paranoia. They stopped talking to each other and began alternately whispering to the microphones in one-way mirrored portholes. Oddly, they all seemed to think they could win the trust of the experimenters by turning over their comrades, the other subjects in captivity, with them. At first, the subjects suspected this was an effect of the gas itself. After 9 days, the first of them started screaming. He ran the length of the chamber, repeatedly yelling at the top of his lungs for 3 hours straight. He continued attempting to scream, but was only able to produce occasional squeaks. The researchers postulated that he had physically torn his vocal cords. The most surprising thing about this behavior is how the other captives reacted to it, or rather, didn't react to it. They continued whispering to the microphones until the second of the captives started to scream. The 2 non-screaming captives took the books apart, smeared page after page with their own feces, and paced them calmly over the glass portholes. The screaming promptly stopped. So did the whispering to the microphones. After 3 more days passed, the researchers checked the microphones hourly to make sure they were still working, since they thought it was impossible that no sound could be coming with 5 people inside. The oxygen consumption in the chamber indicated that all 5 must still be alive. In fact, it was the amount of oxygen 5 people would consume at a very heavy level of strenuous exercise. On the morning of the 14th day, the researchers did something they said they would not do to get a reaction from the captives. They used the intercom inside the chamber, hoping to provoke any response from the captives they were afraid were either dead or vegetables. They announced, "We are opening the chamber to test the microphones. Step away from the door and lay flat on the ground or you will be shot. Compliance will earn one of you your immediate freedom." To their surprise, they heard a single phrase in a calm voice response, "We no longer want to be freed." Debate broke over amongst the researchers and the military forces funding the research. Unable to provoke any more response, using the intercom, it was finally decided to open the chamber at midnight on the 15th day. The chamber was flushed of the stimulant gas and filled with fresh air, and immediately voices from the microphones began to object. 3 different voices began begging, as if pleading for the life of loved ones, to turn the gas back on. The chamber was opened and soldiers sent in to retrieve the test subjects. They began to scream louder than ever, and so did the soldiers when they saw what was inside. 4 of the 5 subjects were still alive, although no one could rightly call the state that any of them in life. The food rations past day 5 had not been so much as touched. There were chunks of meat from the dead test subjects' thighs and chest, stuffed into the drain in the center of the chamber, blocking the drain and allowing 4 inches of water to accumulate on the floor. Precisely how much of the water on the floor was actually blood was never determined. All 4 surviving test subjects also had large portions of muscle and skin torn away from their bodies. The destruction of flesh and exposed bone on their fingertips indicated that the wounds were inflicted by hand, not with teeth, as the researchers initially thought. Closer examination of the position and angles of the wounds indicated that most, if not all of them, were self-inflicted. The abdominal organs below the rib cage of all 4 test subjects have been removed, while the heart, lungs, and diaphragm remained in place. The skin and most of the muscles attached to the ribs have been ripped off, exposing the lungs through the rib cage. All the blood vessels and organs remained intact. They had just been taken out and laid on the floor, fanning out around the eviscerated but still living bodies of the subjects. The digestive tract of all 4 could be seen to be working, digesting food. It quickly became apparent that what they were digesting was their own flesh that they have ripped off and eaten over the course of days. Most of the soldiers were Russian special operatives at the facility, but still many refused to return to the chamber to remove the test subjects. They continued to scream to be left in the chamber and alternately begged and demanded that the gas be turned back on, lest they fall asleep. To everyone's surprise, the test subjects put up a fierce fight in the process of being removed from the chamber. One of the Russian soldiers died from having his throat ripped out. Another was gravely injured by having his testicles ripped off and an artery in his leg severed by one of the subject's teeth. Another 5 of the soldiers lost their lives, if you count the ones that committed suicide in the weeks following the incident. In the struggle, one of the 4 living subjects had his spleen ruptured, and he bled out almost immediately. The medical researchers attempted to sedate him, but this proved impossible. He was injected with more than 10 times the human dose of a morphine derivative, and still fought back like a cornered animal, breaking the ribs and arm of one doctor. When heart was seen to beat for a full 2 minutes after he had bled out to the point there was more air in his vascular system than blood, even after it stopped, he continued to scream and flail for another 3 minutes, struggling to attack anyone in reach, and just repeated the word "more" over and over, weaker and weaker, until he finally fell silent. The surviving 3 test subjects were heavily restrained and moved to a medical facility, the 2 with intact vocal cords continuously begging for the gas, demanding to be kept awake. The most injured of the 3 was taken to the only surgical operating room that the facility had. In the process of preparing the subject to have his organs placed back within his body, it was found that he was effectively immune to the sedative they have given him to prepare for the surgery. He fought fiercely against his restraints when the anesthetic gas was brought out to put him under. He managed to tear most of the way through a 4-inch wide leather strap on one wrist, even through the weight of a 200-pound soldier holding that wrist as well. It took only a little more anesthetic than normal to put him under. In an instant, his eyelids fluttered and closed. His heart stopped. In the autopsy of the test subject that died on the operating table, it was found that his blood had tripled the normal level of oxygen. His muscles that were still attached to his skeleton were badly torn, and he had broken 9 bones in his struggle not to be subdued. Most of them were from the force his muscles had exerted on them. The second survivor had been the first of the group of 5 to start screaming. His vocal cords destroyed, He was unable to beg or object to surgery, and he only reacted by shaking his head violently in disapproval when the anesthetic gas was brought near him. He shook his head yes when someone suggested reluctantly they try the surgery without anesthetic, and did not react for the entire 6-hour procedure of replacing his abdominal organs and attempting to cover them with what remained of his skin. The surgeon presiding stated repeatedly that it should be medically possible for the patient to still be alive. One terrified nurse assisting the surgery stated that she had seen the patient's mouth curl into a smile several times whenever his eyes met hers. When the surgery ended, the subject looked at the surgeon and began to wheeze loudly, attempting to talk while struggling. Assuming this must be something of drastic importance, the surgeon had a pen and paper fetched so the patient can write his message. It was simply, "Keep cutting." The other 2 test subjects were given the same surgery, both without anesthetic as well, although they had to be injected where a paralytic for the duration of the operation. The surgeon found it impossible to perform the operation while the patients laughed continuously. Once paralyzed, the subjects could only follow the attempting researchers with their eyes. The paralytic cleared their system in an abnormally short period of time, and they were trying to escape their bonds. The moment they could speak, they were again asking for the stimulant gas. The researchers tried asking why they had injured themselves, why they had ripped out their own guts, and why they wanted to be given the gas again. Only one response was given: "I must remain awake." All 3 test subjects' restraints were reinforced, and they were placed back into the chamber, awaiting determination as to what should be done with them. Their researchers, facing the wrath of their military benefits for having failed the stated goals of their project, considered euthanizing the surviving subjects. The commanding officer, an ex-KGB, instead saw potential and wanted to see what would happen if they were put back on the gas. The researchers strongly objected, but were overruled. In preparation for being sealed in the chamber again, the subjects were connected to an EEG monitor and had their restraints padded for long-term confinement. To everyone's surprise, all 3 stopped struggling the moment it was slipped they were going back on the gas. It was obvious that at this point, all 3 were putting up a great struggle to stay awake. One of the subjects that could speak was humming loudly and continuously. The mute subject was straining his legs against the leather bonds with all his might. First left, then right, then left again for something to focus on. The remaining subject was holding his head off his pillow and blinking rapidly. Having been the first to be wired for EEG, most of the researchers were monitoring his brainwaves in surprise. They were normal most of the time, but sometimes flatlined inexplicably. It looked as if he were repeatedly suffering brain death before returning to normal. As they focused on papers scrolling out of the brainwave monitor, only one nurse saw his eyes slip shut at the same moment his head hit the pillow. His brainwaves immediately changed to that of deep sleep, then flatlined for the last time as his heart simultaneously stopped. The only remaining subject that could speak started screaming to be sealed in. His brainwaves showed the same flatlines as one who just died from falling asleep. The commander gave the order to seal the chamber with both subjects inside, as well as 3 researchers. One of the named 3 immediately drew his gun and shot the commander point blank between the eyes, then turned the gun on the mute subject and blew his brains out as well. He pointed his gun at the remaining subject, still restrained to a bed as the remaining members of the medical and research team fled the room. "I won't be locked in here with these things. Not with you," he screamed at the man strapped to the table. "What are you?" he demanded. "I must know." The subject smiled. "Have you forgotten so easily?" the subject asked. "We are you. We are the madness that lurks within you all, begging to be free at every moment in your deepest animal mind. We are what you hide from in your beds every night. We are what you sedate into silence and paralysis when you go back to the nocturnal haven where we cannot tread. The researcher paused, then aimed at the subject's heart and fired. The EEG flatlined as the subject weakly choked out. So, nearly free.
Nice. Oh, I thought it was gonna flip all the way.
I was hoping that too.
I'm sorry?
You're
I've
attempt
been
number
stressed this
2.
entire time.
Got him.
Josh, you did it.
I did it!
Go over to and type it.
Yo!
Wait, what?
Glitter.
Hold,
Did
you
X
do
to
that?
flip. Wait, what? Did you do
How did you do that?
Nice. Okay.
Soundwave superior. Autobots inferior.
Anyone growing up near San Antonio probably heard of a story about the Donkey Lady. There are different variations, and since I've been looking into it, I'll try to post what I find. On the south side of San Antonio is a bridge known to be the home of the Donkey Lady. Some say she's a ghost, while others say she's a living creature, half donkey and half human. The Donkey Lady Bridge is at the end of Jet Road, before it runs into Applewhite Road. She is said to live in these woods around the bridge and jump on your car, damaging it with her hooves if you park here too long. There are many stories on the internet about this San Antonio legend. Whether she's a ghost or a creature, the Donkey Lady is scary and well known throughout many parts of Texas. Several stories detail how the Donkey Lady came to be, and how she became part donkey, part human. Some stories say she lost her children in a fire set by her husband. She was terribly disfigured in the fire, fusing her fingers and toes together, creating hoof-like hands and feet. Her head was so badly burnt in the fire that it healed in such a warped, elongated fashion, so it resembled that of a donkey. She roams the areas surrounding the bridge in South San Antonio nightly, crying for her children. She will routinely chase off anyone who bothers her by honking. Honking a car's horn is supposedly the best way to get the attention of the beastly Donkey Lady. Another story about how the Donkey Lady came to be surrounds the same bridge area of South San Antonio. In the mid-50s, a woman would walk her donkey along the river in the fields near her home to let the donkey graze. A boy claimed the woman's donkey had bitten him, so the boy's father and several of his friends plotted to grab the donkey as it was being walked by the woman to the fields. They waited in the woods and then jumped out when she walked by and tried to grab the rope from the woman that was leading her donkey. As they fought for the rope, the donkey accidentally fell into the stream and drowned. The men were walking away when the woman started throwing rocks at them. One rock hit one of the men, knocking him unconscious. The other men grabbed the woman and threw her into the water where she drowned. The spirit of her woman and her beloved donkey combined into one, and now angrily roam the area around the bridge. The Donkey Lady ghost is said to have enormous strength, scary eyes, beastly screams, and rage that haunts any who bother her or come into her vicinity. Down in an area near San Antonio, there is the legend of the Donkey Lady. She is reportedly the spirit of a horribly mutated woman, appearing to be half woman, half donkey. She is reported to haunt a bridge in the woods south of town. This location has become a hotspot for local thrill seekers, both young and old. This story is not directly related to me, but happened to some friends of mine. I have known them all my life and have no reason not to believe them. One night, in late 1987, while at my best friend's house, 4 fellow companions showed up. Bored and looking for something to do, we suggested they visit the Donkey Lady Bridge. This location was only a short drive from the house, 5 or 6 miles. It was a local favorite amongst late-night stories. They agreed and were soon driving out of sight. About 6 hours later, their vehicle returned to our driveway, with only one occupant. Assuming he had taken the girls home and that he was ready to party in San Antonio, we went out, anxious to greet him.
What we found at the car is something I'd never forget. The windshield was busted, the front dented, and there was what appeared to be blood all over the hood. We immediately ran over to the driver's door to see if John was alright. However, John was just sitting there, staring out the window with a blank expression on his face. After several minutes of consistent badgering, we finally got him to talk. He, Lisa, Terry, and Jill arrived at the bridge. They began to honk their horn, trying to summon the legendary donkey lady. After about 15 minutes of not seeing anything, they decided to go into the woods and look for themselves. What happened next was truly incredible. If I haven't have known John all my life and seen the car, I would not have believed him. While walking in the woods, John said he got the feeling they were being watched. He immediately stopped and told everyone to be quiet. Looking around and evaluating the situation, he discovered what appearing to be 2 eyes staring at them off in the distance. These eyes seemed to be reflecting the moonlight and were of a color that he said to be indescribable. The girls panicked and began to run back to the car. John was quick to follow, and soon after he turned around, there was a horrible scream from the distance of the eyes. He described it as almost being a cry from an intelligent animal. Too afraid to turn around, he picked up the pace as he ran to the car. When he got there, the girls were already in the car, screaming for him to get in. As he was trying to find his keys, he heard what seemed to be the sounds of a horse running in their direction. Starting the car, he slammed it into gear and put it to the floor. Suddenly, a figure appeared in the road in front of them. Too afraid to stop, John collided with the figure. It hit the hood of the car and rolled over the roof. Looking in his rearview mirror, he said he thought the figure got up and continued to pursue them. After hearing this and seeing the condition of the car, Steve and I immediately felt this deserved a second look. John told us he will never return to that bridge again, but if we wanted to risk our lives to go right ahead. Grabbing 2 flashlights and a pair of shotguns, we jumped in my pickup and made way for the bridge. As we drew closer, we slowed down and turned on the many off-road lights my truck had. These lit the road and the woods on the side of us as if it were daytime, giving us an outstanding view of the bridge as we approached. The first thing we noticed as the bridge drew near was the numerous amounts of blood on the road. However, these were the only signs of evidence we could find. Upon investigation of the woods by foot, we discovered what seemed to be several tracks of a small, unshoed horse leading to the road. After several hours of looking and not finding anything else, we returned to the house. By this time, John had already made his way home, and we laid in bed, too excited to sleep. To this day, none of the 4 individuals involved in this story had returned to the bridge. Did John actually see and strike the donkey lady that night? Or was it merely a stray pony startled by their presence? All I know is that something was there that night, and it scared our friends half to death. She commandeered the room in the basement of her dorm as soon as she realized she would have to pull an all-nighter in order to prepare for tomorrow's final exam. Her roommate, Jenna, liked to go to bed early, so she packed up everything she thought she would need and went downstairs to study. And study. And study some more. It was 2 o'clock when she realized she left one of her textbooks upstairs on her bed. With a dramatic sigh, she rose and climbed the stairs slowly to her 3rd-floor dorm room. The lights were dim in the long hallway, and the old boards creaked under her weary tread. She reached her room and turned the handle as softly as she could, pushing the door open just enough to slip inside, so that the hall lights wouldn't wake her roommate. The room was filled with a strange metallic smell. She frowned a bit, her arms breaking out into chills. There was a strange feeling of malice in the room, as if a malevolent gaze was fixed upon her. It was a mind trick. The all-nighter was catching up with her. She could hear Jenna breathing on the far side of the room, a heavy sound, almost as if she had been running. Jenna must have picked up a cold during the last tense week before finals. She crept along the wall until she reached her bed, groping among the covers for the stray history textbook. In the silence, she could hear a steady drip, drip, drip sound. She sighed silently. Facilities would have to come to fix the sink in the bathroom. Again. Her fingers closed on the textbook. She picked it up softly and withdrew from the room as silently as she could. Relieved to be out of the room, she hurried back downstairs, collapsed into the overstuffed chair, and studied until 6 o'clock. She finally decided that enough was enough. If she slipped upstairs now, she could get a couple hours sleep before her 9 o'clock exam. The first of the sun's rays were beaming through the windows as she slowly slid the door open, hoping not to awaken Jenna. Her nose was met by an earthly metallic smell a second before her eyes registered the scene in her dorm room. Jenna was spread-eagled on top of her bed against the far wall, her throat cut from ear to ear, and her night dress stained with blood. 2 drops of blood fell from the saturated blanket, with a drip-drip noise that sounded like a leaky faucet. Scream after scream poured from her mouth, but she couldn't stop herself any more than she could stop wringing her hands. All along the hallway, doors slammed and footsteps came running down the passage. Within moments, other students had gathered in her doorway, and one of her friends gripped her arm with a shaking hand and pointed a trembling finger towards the wall. Her eyes widened in shock at what she saw. Then she fainted into her friend's arms. On the wall above her bed, written in her roommate's blood, were the words, "Aren't you glad you didn't turn on the light?"
You know, I just realized I haven't seen your pals in a while. I wonder if they're trying to get the jump on me. Ah, he knows! Whoa. Ah! No!
Better luck next time, fuckboy.
What the fuck is with this guy? Whoa, that's hot! I hope I die. Simmons, do something about this door.
What do you mean?
It's locked. Hack the door controls or something.
What makes you think I could just hack a door?
You're the smart one. All you're good for is hacking things and making me look more handsome in comparison.
I don't have any intel. I don't have any tools. I can't just do it. I need time.
We don't have time, genius. Just pretend like it's a timed math test or something.
I don't work well under pressure. You know that.
Why weren't you at elf practice?
Don't worry, we'll just do what we did last time.
Oh my dude, you just got pranked. Let's get some out coming up.
I'm going to hold on, but I'm scared to let go.
Shut up and listen to me. Everyone, I am so
Completely insane. I would know.
What? What the fuck?
surprise, motherfucker. Ah!
Okay, look. They're just standing there and talking, okay? That's all they're doing. That's all they ever do is just stand there and talk. That's what they were doing last week. That's what they were doing when you asked me 5 minutes ago. So 5 minutes from now, when you ask me, what are they doing, my answer is going to be, they're still just talking, and they're still just standing there.
What are they talking about?
Say what again? Say what again? I dare you. I double dare you, motherfucker. Say what one more goddamn time.
No, please! Dickhead. Everybody just chill out until... Wash! What the fuck are you doing? Wash! Get down! Oh, hey...
Fucking whores! You fucking whores!
Everybody just chill out until... Wash! What the fuck are you doing? Wash! Get down! Oh, hey...
Not true. That's impossible.
Search your feelings. You know it to be true.
Hey, Felix. Catch. Wait!
How could this happen to me? I made my mistakes, got nowhere to run. The night goes on as I'm fading away.
Hello there.
General Kenobi.
Don't you, Texas? Well, let me ask you something. Who's the monster now, bitch?
Say hello to my little friend!
Oh, shit.
Son of a bitch.
What's going on?
It's her.
What? What's she doing here?
Soundwave superior. Autobots inferior.
Have you ever heard of the Disney mirror ritual? Don't be fooled by its name, or its location at the happiest place on Earth. It's a fairly dangerous ritual, with a high chance of getting caught. Granted, the payoff is fairly high. It is not known why or how this ritual came to be at Disney World. It is said that each of the Disney parks have its own unique ritual, with the same consequences for failure. But the one at Disney World seems to have the most known information. This is a mirror ritual. Mirror mythology is well invoked in Disney stories. Think Beauty and the Beast, Snow White, 1 Hour in Wonderland, and such. I'm sure you think such a ritual would take place at the Haunted Mansion or one of the spookier rides, but you would be wrong. The main part of the ritual takes place at Cinderella's castle, roughly the epicenter of the Magic Kingdom. The night part of the ritual must take place between 2 and 4 a.m. To complete this ritual, you will need 3 items: a piece of chalk, a knife that had its handle broken off, in other words, simply the blade. The type of knife does not matter, but as you will need to sneak this in past security, you might want a smaller blade. You can conceal it in your shoe or some other hiding place. A broken shard of mirror, roughly the size of your palm. You might want to find a pretty broken shard if you believe in the superstition of 7 years of bad luck. The ritual begins during daytime hours of the Magic Kingdom section of Disneyland. During the day, you must hide the 3 items in separate areas of the park. The areas to choose from are Main Street USA, Liberty Square, Fantasyland, Adventureland, Frontierland, and Tomorrowland. Study the map of the park and decide which routes would be the easiest to travel undetected.
Do not pick distances you can't manage. Keep in mind that the area around Cinderella's castle will be the most heavily patrolled by security. While there are security cameras in the park, don't worry about them. Something about the ritual makes them seem to malfunction. Before hiding the items, head to the tunnel going through Cinderella's castle. Be careful here. There are some Disney staff that are aware of the ritual and know to keep an eye out for those attempting it. Hide the chalk in your hand, pick up a brick you are able to reach at face level, and when you're absolutely sure no one is watching you. You might want to ask a friend to make a distraction, or ask any immediate staff questions to get their attention. Mark the corner of the brick with the chalk. Say the words, mirror, mirror, then leave. This will tell the park you intend to play. You will use this brick during the ritual. Then find hiding places for the items. At this point, you have completed the daytime part of the ritual. Use the remaining time as you will until the park closes, but make sure you find a place that you can remain hidden once the park closes for the night. It's not easy, but it has been done. If you decide not to go through with the ritual, retrieve the items, erase the chalk mark, and leave the park. You can only cancel the ritual during the daytime hours. Do not attempt the ritual again, ever. Do not emerge from your hiding place right after the park closes. It will be full of maintenance workers and patrolling security. Wait until at least an hour after the park closes. But remember, you need to be done before 4 a.m. The security presence will be smaller by that hour, but by no means gone. Watch for the rolling security guards as you make your way to your items. Retrieve the mirror shard last, or you'll trigger the more dangerous parts of the ritual early. If you reach any of your hiding places and the item is gone, run. The park does not accept your challenge. You'll need to reach the entrance and get out, or even get yourself busted by security, which will be a much preferable fate. Once you retrieve the mirror shard, you will begin the second, more dangerous phase of the ritual. Security patrols are no longer your concern. They will have mysteriously disappeared or gone dark. You may see a flashlight beam way off in the distance, but they will not come close to you. Some chalk this up to magic. Others theorize that completing the steps until this point triggers a parallel dimension of sorts within the park. Regardless of the cause, you have a new concern. Make haste and head towards Cinderella's castle, but once again, try to stay out of sight. Use the mirror shard to look around corners and behind you, and keep the broken blade in your dominant hand. You are on the lookout for figures that have been dubbed the Faults. The Faults take the form of Disney mascots that you might see during the daytime. Don't be fooled. The paid Disney mascots went home hours ago. It's not exactly hard to tell the difference. Suits worn by these figures will appear filthy, matted, and generally tattered. You will most likely find them lurking around corners, which is why you want to use the mirror first. If you see one of them in your mirror, take the blade lightly between your fingers and drag it across the reflection on the mirror with the point. This will promote the figure to move away. However, odds are you will have at least one encounter with the Faults face to face. They are capable of appearing at will if you are on a straight street or bridge with no turns. Should you see a Faults at any point not as a mirror reflection, shut your eyes immediately and gently place the mirror shard at your feet, but keep hold of the blade. Remain still with your eyes shut and listen for footsteps and rattling breath. The Faults will be moving slowly towards you. It will stop at arm's length in front of you and reach. Your only chance for escape is to estimate when it is reaching for you. Then reach out and jab the figure itself with your blade. Do not miss. You won't get a second chance. Miss, and you fail the ritual. Consequences and failures are discussed later. If your aim is true, the Faults will hiss in pain
and begin moving along. When the footsteps are no longer audible, you can open your eyes, retrieve your mirror, and continue on your path. Your blade will become weaker each time a face-to-face encounter occurs. If your blade breaks, you will be defenseless. The faults will know. Keep face-to-face encounters to a minimum. Should you successfully arrive at Cinderella's castle, you will be safe. Find the brick you marked, take your mirror, and hold it to the brick. Trace a chalk outline around the shard. When you pull your hand away, the shard will remain on the surface. Step back and turn around 3 times clockwise. With each turn, say the words, "Mirror, mirror," for a total of 3 times. Upon completing the 3rd turn, you will face the wall only to see that the surface area of the brick has become that of the mirror. Look into the mirror, and you will see the faint outline of a clouded face. Here is where the goal of your ritual comes into play. Make sure you choose the question beforehand. The face will slowly say, past, present, future. To choose, nod your head after the mirror says the one you want. If you nod for past, the mirror will show you the answer to your question regarding the past. It can range from a personal mystery from your own past to a historical mystery such as who killed JFK. For present, you can ask to be shown a solution to a problem currently plaguing you or an issue the world currently faces. Future, needless to say, will show you a future outcome yet to pass. Ask the mirror your question and watch your long-awaited answer. Once you have your answer, step away from the mirror again. Turn around 3 times, now in a counterclockwise direction. Again, with each turn, say the words, "Mirror, mirror," for a total of 3 times. Upon completing the 3rd turn, the mirror will be gone, and so will the shard. The castle has taken it as tribute. Leave the castle and head back to your hiding place. On your way, drop the blade into the moat surrounding the castle. Keep hold of the chalk. You don't need to worry about being caught by security or any faults at this point. The park respects your accomplishment and will allow you temporary safe passage. However, do not take this gesture as excuse to linger or explore. This will be taken as arrogance or an insult, and your protection will be provoked. Simply head back to your initial hiding spot as quickly as you can. When you return to the hiding spot, draw a circle of chalk around you. If in a location with a door, draw a half circle around the door on the floor. Remain hidden until morning, when the park opens and visitors have been let back in. Do not fall asleep. Do not respond to any voices or footsteps you may hear, no matter how close the sounds get to you. If you're hiding in a place with a door, do not react to knocks, no matter how frantic they become. You will remain safe if you stay awake and quiet. Most importantly of all, do not follow along if you hear any Disney song being played. This includes singing, humming, or even the song in your head, in your mind. Cover your ears with your hands and don't let the song get stuck in your head. The following day, once you know visitors have begun entering the park, leave your hiding spot and immediately head for the exit of the park. Do not stop to do anything, just leave. Drop the chalk at the entrance, and once you have left, never return to Disney World. Ever. The park knows you, and your welcome has worn out. Now, the part that has yet to be discussed is what happens if you fail the ritual. Should you be caught by the faults during the item retrieval, linger too long outside your hiding place after completing the night ritual, or answer to voices or knocks before morning. Should one of the faults place their hand on you, you will lose the ability to move freely. If you return to the park after successfully completing the ritual,
You will encounter a faults that no one else will appear to see. In any case, they will slowly lead you to the entrance of the park. You can walk away, but no matter where you go or what you do during the night, the next day you will find yourself at the entrance of the park once again. Only you will once again have no control over your actions. As if in a hypnotic trance, you will move towards your fate. Perhaps you will find yourself on a track with non-functioning seat restraints, only to be thrown out onto the tracks. Walking on the above-ground monorail tracks with an incoming train behind you. On a riverboat that floats into waters not made for swimming. In the path of an oncoming parade float. Wherever fate, the happiest place on earth, has for you, rest assured it won't involve a happily ever after.